It's fun to play. I haven't played nothing but this since I got it. So it's been like I say, neck's been here about a week. And,
right.
Frank built a great neck, Frank Need, and just couldn't be happier with it.
That's great.
But
we couldn't tell in your face
no
or in the
kidding.
way that you're playing just how you really feel about this, Jim.
This is a different animal, though. I have to say, I've had a no-hole flathead before, but not a fat rim no-hole. And this Banjo's 9467-2.
Yeah.
The same batch as was about 5 known now. One right here beside me. And, and J.D. Crow's is -5.
Yeah.
Cool to have 3 or 4.
And Paul, yours number's -12.
-12.
And then Brian's is -14.
14.
That's right.
And Bill Stokes is -11.
That's
okay.
Right. Earliest 2 and 5. And
right.
1 and 3 and I guess 4 never have turned up yet. So maybe they will. Don't know where they're at. They may be gone.
Well, I mean, Justin, you finding this and David finding, through Greg Ernst and they're continuing to surface.
They are.
The thing that was interesting here is that one was in Lincoln, Nebraska. This was in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Actually, Loop City, Nebraska.
Loop
City, Nebraska. But both of them more than likely shipped to Nebraska, which is pretty weird.
Furniture store, music store.
You know, I don't know. I've not checked into that.
Okay.
I just know that's where he was from.
Yeah.
Could have shipped to Lincoln, for sure. But we don't know. But it's very cool to find them.
Man, that bridge on there just really, I mean.
Whose bridge are you using?
This is an old David Wadsworth bridge. I've had probably 15 years.
Sure. When David
Wadsworth, I don't know if everybody knows, he's a pastor from around Bristol.
Yeah.
And makes bridges. He doesn't make a bunch of them. He just does when he feels like it. And he pastored this church for a good long while. And I think, if I'm not wrong, they had changed something out in the church. I think they had an old organ in there that had been some water damage in the floor.
You're right.
And they pulled it out, and when they did, they replaced a bunch of floorboards, and they happened to be great maple.
Yes.
And he noticed that and started to make some banjo bridges out of them. And he made several, sent me 2 or 3, and I said, well, send me about 20 of them. And he did. Right. And I used a bunch of them, and had thrown a bunch of them in a drawer, and I recently dug them out when I got this banjo, and this one just suits this banjo very well. I had him build several different heights, thicknesses, different size bridges, and I said, build some. Sent him some old Grover bridges from the 60s that I had. I said something similar to that.
So that's a Grover profile, Grover look.
That David Wadsworth made for me probably a good 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
It's been stuck in a drawer somewhere, but I'm glad it came out when it was needed.
Yeah.
So it works very well in this banjo. Yeah, I think it's about a 120-year-old maple.
Is that
at the church, for sure.
Wow.
Very cool. Yeah, another thing noticeable about this banjo is the neck wood came out of Kalamazoo. A good friend of mine, Rock Bartley, had salvaged some mahogany from my home that was built in Kalamazoo, Michigan in the 1920s or 30s. This lady wanted to replace he's a finished carpenter by trade. And I asked him where he got the particular piece of wood that was on the neck that he built. And he said, funny you should ask. He said, I was remodeling a front door on a home in Kalamazoo that had been built in maybe the 20s or 30s. And he said it was out of beautiful Honduras mahogany. And he said I was able to get several banjo neck blanks out of that piece of wood. Well, I ended up buying 3 from him, and I'd been saving them for a special project. A few of them had some screw holes and things like that still present in them. And I'd been saving them for a special project, so when I got this plectrum banjo in, I knew I wanted Frank to build me a 5-string neck. I sent Frank a piece of that same mahogany, so it's pretty neat that the mahogany came out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. The fingerboard rosewood came out of the factory from the 60s, so it's all kind of came back together to what it would be. And if that isn't the other thing too, these detuners on here are just standard Keith detuners.
Right.
And I had gotten in several conversion banjos over the period of several years with detuners on them, some of them in disrepair, missing screws, not working. And I called Bill Keith last year, and I said, Bill, they tell me you'll refurbish these detuners if I send them back to you. He said, yeah, $18 a set, send them back and I'll refurbish them. I said, okay. So I sent him 3 or 4 sets, gold ones, nickel ones, whatever. And this past October, he came to visit me during IBMA in Raleigh. And he said, there's something special about this particular set of tuners. And he had a little note on it. He said, ask me about these tuners. And I said, very rare pair from 1964. So I asked him about them. He said they were this particular set of tuners is of the first 100 Keith D tuners ever made. And he said the reason he knows that is they changed the design, the actual body of the tuners a little shorter than what they make today. And he showed me they added a pin that wasn't in there in the first batch. And he said the first set, of course, they sent to Earl Scruggs. And he said, funny thing is they didn't work. They had never tested them under tension, and Earl sent them back. And they had to replace a pin in there. But this is an early set of tuners, one of the first 100 sets ever made. And they work great. I'd say they're some of the best deep tuners I've ever had. So.
And like you had mentioned about the nail holes.
Yeah, there's a nail hole.
Yeah, there's
a
actually
screw hole actually present in the heel.
Right.
You can see that Frank patched when he made the neck.
Right.
I thought I'd given him a blank that didn't have any in it, but that's absolutely it. So kind of goes along with the story. That's
that's
sure.
great.
So, yeah, very cool. Very cool. It's a very lightweight piece of wood. This neck off the banjos just feels lighter to me than the typical neck that you feel today, and I attribute that to the older piece of wood. It's going to be another cool thing that we can think about is I understood that Gibson didn't necessarily buy their Honduras mahogany directly from Honduras. They bought it from a exotic wood dealer there in Kalamazoo for the most part, or somewhere local by.
Right.
I would have to think this piece of wood that went in a house in Kalamazoo in the 20s or 30s more than likely came
from the same supply
place
point.
or a similar. Was shipped. It's got that same kind of grain pattern. J.D. Crowe and I talked years ago about mahogany today on some necks doesn't look like the same kind of grain pattern that you saw in the 30s, and this has that. That's why I noticed it. And I'm not real scientific, but you know, there's a lot of different species of spruce, for example, and the same goes for mahogany. It's all over the place in the way it looks. But this has that real lightweight, it's really good tone wood.
Right.
Frank said it was some of the best wood he'd worked with.
You know, if there's old growth maple, there's old growth mahogany.
And I imagine it matters about where it came from in Honduras, where it was cut, what kind of elevations, whatever it might be, how well it was dried out. I was talking to a guy here today about that. He said, man, what a great place for wood to naturally air dry in the elements of a door, of a house. My God, it was everything, you know, snow, cold, rain.
Hot in the summer and dry. And
it'd been this house since it was built in the 1920s or 30s.
Is that right?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, ultimate weather exposure.
Kalamazoo wood. That's yeah, came out of some rainforest somewhere. Well, we can't find Brian, can we?